Hey folks, and welcome to this second video about National 5 English portfolio writing. This time we're going to be talking about main body paragraphs. Last time we talked about introductions. I'm going to recap that in a little second. Just a quick reminder, quick disclaimer that I have made this video with my National 5 English class in mind. However, regardless of what school you go to or whose class you're in, you may still find an awful lot of this very useful. So let's get started. Hopefully, since the last time, you've written your intro. So just a reminder, what was it that we wanted from a good introduction? We wanted the topic to be very clear. We wanted you to explain why it's something worth reading about. You've revealed whether it's an argumentative or persuasive piece of writing. You've tried to include an anecdote, explained any technical terms, used a technique such as repetition, rhetorical question, emotive language, but not all of them at once. You don't want to overstuff your introduction. So maybe your introduction looks something like this one. Notice the use of questions to involve the reader here. The use of smartphones in classrooms has become a contentious issue in schools in recent months. Most pupils carry one of these miniature computers these days, and you can see them being used on the way to school, on the way home from school, and in school social areas. Should we now allow these devices to be used in classrooms, or are there too many dangers associated with them? That's a very short intro. Yours might be a little bit longer, but we can see here that right away in the first sentence they introduce that this is going to be an essay about smartphones and how they're used in schools. They've explained what a smartphone is for anyone that might not be sure. Most people these days have one, but in case you don't, miniature computer. There's the use of repetition with the list of places where you can see the phones being used on the way to school, the way home from school, in school, and then two rhetorical questions at the end to get the reader to start thinking about how they feel about the topic. So a pretty good intro. If you need to pause the video at this point because you want to use this as a kind of way to check your introduction against it to see if there's anything that you can do to mirror it, then you should absolutely do that. Otherwise, I'm going to move on just now. So, just quickly, once again, quick disclaimer, the SQA do have rules about reasonable assistance and how much help you can get from your teacher. So remember, they can have a discussion with you about your topic, your theme, genre, help you with your outline plan, and give you written feedback on one draft of writing. But they can't model answers which are specific to your essay. They can't tell you what to write. They can't tell you specifically how to rephrase something. They can't give you any ideas that you don't find for yourself or how to structure something that's specific to your piece of work. They can't continually correct your spelling and punctuation all the time, and they can't give you more feedback on more than one draft of writing. So this is an independent piece of work. It has to be from you. You have to spend time on it. Obviously, your teacher will give you all the help they can, just like I'm going to help my class in every way that I can. But we can't do everything for you. I have to give you a little bit of independence, so don't forget that as we go through this video. So you've hopefully decided by now, is it persuasive writing? In which case, you're making a strong case for your point of view, like a lawyer. Judge Judy, well, she's a judge, not a lawyer. That maybe wasn't the best picture to use, but you get the point. You have to aim to influence the person reading it to agree with you. So if you've decided to do a persuasive piece of writing, by the end of it, you hope that your reader agrees with you, understands where you're coming from. An argumentative piece of writing, big argument here from the world of comics and cinema between Captain America and Iron Man. Evaluating two or more viewpoints in a balanced manner. You want to inform the reader, enlighten them, help them pick their own sides. So it's slightly different from persuasive writing. By the end of it, you want them to make their own mind up, and you're presenting them the argument. Balanced manner is important here. So you might use more emotive language, which we talked about in the last video, in a persuasive essay, and maybe more a kind of formal, straight down the line, balanced tone is what you're going to go for if you're doing an argumentative piece of writing. But that doesn't mean you can't use emotive words at all, right? They still have their place. So, important now that we're talking about main body paragraphs, and that is sources, right? You want to keep a list of your sources. Now, that can be websites that you've visited, magazine articles or newspaper articles that you've read. It can be information that you got from people firsthand. If you've interviewed someone, I know someone in my class is interviewing a person that in their family who I think is part of the profession that they're writing about. So your information can come from anywhere. It's more likely to be online now, which makes this a little bit easier. In your Word document, where you're writing your essay, copy and paste all the websites that you go to, okay? because for your discursive piece of writing, for your argumentative or your persuasive piece, you must make a list at the end of all the sources that you've consulted. So it does say that you can add them as footnotes, but I think a list at the end of your piece of writing is easier to do. So you need some clear details in there. So the link to the newspaper article is a good place to start. I will show you in class, and I'll put it in the conclusion video that I'm making, how you should lay out your sources. But please keep a list of them. You don't want to be in the position where you finish writing and you've got to go back and find them all again, because that can be time consuming, a waste of time, and maybe you'll not find something that you've read already. So keep a list. Just keep copying and pasting those links into the bottom of your Word document. So much easier to do it as you go. Now, plans. Remember last time I said you want to make a plan, and for an argumentative essay, it might look something like this: for and against, all your plans laid out. For a persuasive essay, it might look more like this, where you've got all your key persuasive arguments. Now, some people have said to me in consultation after the first video, like, what if I don't have 5 arguments? That's okay. You might have 4, you might have 3, you might have 8. You're going to have to do a lot of editing to make sure you write 1,000 words if you've got as many as 8. However, this is just an outline, an example. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. Similar with your persuasive essay. Like maybe you've only got 2 or 3 persuasive arguments and you're going to explore them in great detail. That's great. Maybe you've got 5 or 6 and you want to explore them in shorter paragraphs. That's totally fine as well. Remember, this is your own piece of writing. I'll stress that quite a lot in this video. It's your essay. These are just hints. These are just tips. These are just things that have worked for other people. You might reinvent the wheel and write an essay in a style that I've never seen before, and it might work out perfectly well. But this is the stuff that's worked out for people in the past. So if we stick closely to this, we'll do okay. But obviously, there's a little bit of room for personalisation and choice. Some people's topics that they've picked might not fit neatly into these kind of plans and templates, and that'll be up to you to work through that. Independent piece of writing, like I said. So, how should you structure an argumentative essay? Well, like I said, it's up to you. It's your essay. You structure it how you want to. However, this might be a good way to do it. So, you might want to start with a paragraph for, then a paragraph against, a paragraph for, and a paragraph against, and so on. Okay? Personally, I think this works better than doing all of your fors and then all of your againsts. I think it flows better if you go between a for and against, a for and against. Now, there's 4 paragraphs here, but you might have 6. You might have 7 or 8. It's totally going to depend on your essay, so don't worry about there only being 4 on this screen. So in the first paragraph, you're going to start with a strong point to keep your reader interested. Your first against paragraph, paragraph 2. Move on to your first counter-argument. Some objectors claim that. Use a nice introductory transition sentence like that to get you started. Then you go back to the for side, paragraph 3. Bring it back to a for argument. Of course, it is also true that blah, blah, blah. And then a final against paragraph is number 4, where you switch back to an against argument. However, others will argue that. So use the language of argumentative writing to switch back and forth between them. This can be a nice way to lay out an argumentative essay. Not the only way, but a way that's worked for some people, so you might want to use it. What about persuasive essays? Slightly different. I'm going to give you a little technique that I think works for people. So, paragraph 1, your first persuasive argument. Paragraph 2, your second persuasive argument. Paragraph 3, a wee counter-argument. I'll explain more about that in a wee second. Paragraph 4, back to your persuasive argument. So, why that red paragraph? Well, let me explain. So, paragraph 1, start with a strong point to keep the reader interested again. You maybe want to open with one of your stronger persuasive points. Paragraph 2, move to a second argument, but maybe not a main one. Maybe one that's good and interesting and useful, but maybe not the most powerful or the most emotive. Just a kind of secondary one, a kind of B-level one. Paragraph 3, what's this counter-argument about? Why not bring up a counter-argument? Some might say. However, you only bring it up to then slap it down. Right? It can be quite useful in a persuasive one to take the other point of view for a paragraph and kind of say, well, this is what other people might think. But then immediately in your next paragraph say, but this is why I don't think that. This is why I disagree. So by using a wee counter argument in your persuasive essay, it can really build you up to your most powerful and interesting persuasive point at the end. And it structures it in a way that makes it more powerful and more interesting. So switch back to a strong persuasive argument to slap down that counter. Now, you might not do that. Some people writing a persuasive essay might not bring up any counter arguments. That's fine. You might do persuasive argument 1, persuasive argument 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, and you just don't want to bring in a counter. It might not suit your topic. However, if there are counter arguments, if there are people out there that would disagree with you, then it can give your essay a level of sophistication if you include a wee counter argument, but you're not giving it too much oxygen. You're just bringing it in to be like, whatever though, I don't agree with that, and this is why you should agree with me. That can be quite a useful structure for persuasive. Try it out. Remember, structure can change. Once you've got your essay written in a Word document, you can move it around and copy and paste bits here and there. So you'll find a structure that works for you and works for your topic with a little bit of redrafting. Now, this is important. We want to use linking phrases to make clear how the argument is progressing. Now, that's not just for argumentative essays. Persuasion is an argument as well, but you're just arguing one side. Now, some people might do things like this. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, my fourth point. Those are good. They work quite well in a critical essay, for example. But remember, a persuasive or argumentative essay is meant to be a little bit closer to the kind of thing that you would see in an RUAE paper, like a newspaper-style article. So think about how they transition between their paragraphs. Things like the selections on the screen here. In addition to this, in the same way, it's certainly true that of greater significance is the fact that, more importantly, however, perhaps the most compelling argument is, therefore, evidence would suggest that, try and find out a different way to transition. Nothing wrong with saying first, second, third, my fourth argument, and all that kind of stuff. Those are fine. Those are good. They're solid. They show that you've got an awareness of structure and flow, that you understand that you have a line of argument that you're trying to stick to. But, why not challenge yourself a wee bit and try and make it look a little bit more like one of those RUAE articles? Paragraph structure. How should we structure the individual paragraphs? Now, this is not like a critical essay where you might use P or PEAL or PCQE or all the various other acronyms that English teachers just love to trot out every year with different classes. But there is a kind of way to just make sure that everything is nice and neat. So I want you to look at this. Oh, baby. Look at that tasty burger. Guys, if there are vegans or vegetarians watching, we can pretend that's corn, right? Well, if that's just, it's corn. Just tell yourself that. And that's non-dairy cheese. If that makes you feel better, we can pretend that's not there. So my apologies, but this was the easiest picture that I could find on Google Images. Now, think of your main paragraphs as burgers. Not that they're so good you could eat them, but maybe some of your paragraphs will be. In terms of their structure, okay, so we've got the bun up on top. That's your topic sentence. Now, that might sound a little bit like a critical essay, so I just mean introduce your point, explain what it is you're going to be mentioning and talking about in this paragraph. Then in the middle, you've got all the good stuff, okay? You've got the meat, the veg, the sauce, all the goodies. And that could be your facts, your figures, your opinions, your quotations, whatever it might be. You might not have all four. That's okay. You might just have one or two of those things. And then you've got the bottom part of the bun where you conclude, and you include maybe a wee link back to the central argument. Bring everything back together again, right? Now, obviously, a burger has to be structured like this, otherwise it's going to fall apart in your hand. Or, I mean, you try to pick up a burger if it doesn't have a top bun or a bottom bun on it, it's, you're going to get sticky fingers, right? It's going to be a mess. So try and think about your paragraph structure that way and just keep it neat, because it'll give yourself a nice structure. Now, obviously, this doesn't have to be prescriptive. You might have a very specific way that you started writing your essay, and that's fine. There's plenty of room for freedom of expression and choice with this. But if you're unsure, stick to a structure like this to kind of keep you going. A topic, introduce it, all the goodies in the middle, and then conclude this part, move back to the main argument, and then a nice wee transition sentence to move on to the next paragraph. So, for example, this is an extract from a Folio piece that the SQA share on their website. So I'm going to read this to you just now. I know that some people think that older adults should just apply for a disabled badge if it is that much of a hassle. But then that comes with being branded as disabled for something that is purely age-related. If you have a badge system that is given to you when you reach a certain age, it will help Britain's older adults stay mobile and, most importantly, stay connected. Most of our older adults who have suffered a fall, whether at home or outside, have a fear of going anywhere in case they fall again. Providing access to a safe, level walkway reduces this fear. Isolation is also a killer of older adults in Britain. So how could we implement a badge system like this? There are two ways I can think of. The first being remove some blue badge spaces and replace them with a brown badge space. The second way being, allow disabled spaces to also be used by someone who is a brown badge holder. One thing I feel we shouldn't do, however, is tell the older adult to get a disabled badge. Growing old shouldn't be a disability. However, we should make it easier for the person. So this was a discursive essay about disability badges. And if you look at this paragraph, they use the burger structure. Okay, so up here, we've got a topic sentence that introduces their point. They're going to be talking about these disabled badges and how they should be distributed. In the middle, we've got all the goodies. There's facts, figures, opinions, quotes. Well, let's have a look and see what is in there. Are there any facts? Yep, there are certainly some facts about the types of badges. Any figures? No, I don't see any percentages or numbers or anything, but that's okay. Opinions? Yep, they've given their opinion on how we should tackle this problem. Any quotes? Nope, no quotes in this one. That's okay, you don't need to have all those things. And then at the end, boof, little concluding sentence there that links back to the central argument about making it easier for people to get these badges. So a nice, good paragraph there. Let's look at this one. Woofed. This is a really, really long paragraph. I'll read it to you now. Dark humour can deliver a message. It can be subtle, brutal, and thought-provoking, yet powerful in its honesty, forcing us to consider the taboo subjects that we would rather shun than embrace. Within the medical world, people can be exposed to distressing situations daily, but despite this, they still need to find an outlet for their bone-chilling emotions. Dark humour can allow them to deal with painful passing, stressful situations, and terrible trepidations in their workplace, while still communicating normally with their co-workers. In fact, this use of humour is so mainstream that medical students are forced to undergo a training course, teaching them to manage the trauma they may encounter in their future profession. This process is commonly acknowledged as gallows humour, a way of ethically dealing with the horror of their chosen profession. However, there is a subtle but essential difference between laughing at the dead and laughing at death. Mocking the afflicted is not where the humour lies, but rather thumbing the nose at mortality. Though doctors are not alone in the world when needing to deal with death, a doctor's patient will need to discover a way of coming to terms with his or her ailment. While some may offend if a person were to make a joke about their condition, others find it reassuring that they are comfortable around them as well as their illness. In addition to this, people processing a death may suffer from high stress levels and prefer to exchange jokes rather than talk seriously about it, as it will help desensitize themselves to the situation. Everybody needs a way to cope with the feelings people would not normally address, because if the subject is delivered as a punchline, perhaps it will lessen the blow. Abuse of dark humour could be overlooked because jokes should be left as jokes, right? There may be no ill intent, but harm could have been caused and should be addressed. Those adroit at its delivery can feel special, intelligent, even superior. They are part of an elite few that understand the joke. It allows us to stop, if only for a minute, and shake off the stresses of the day and start fresh tomorrow. So this was an essay about dark humour and the importance of dark humour, a persuasive essay. Quite a long paragraph here, but still follows that structure. We've got this sentence up here that introduces what they're going to be talking about. They're going to talk about dark humour, delivering a message, and dealing with taboo subjects. Then in the middle, we've got all the goodies. He's talking about how dark humour can be used by people in the medical profession to laugh at something as serious as death. Are there facts? Yep. Are there figures? Don't think so. Opinions? Lots of them. Quotes? Yep, there's a quote in the middle there. And then finally at the bottom, we've got a little concluding sentence that explains what it is that he's been talking about for the last very long paragraph, where they conclude and link back to the central argument, this idea that dark humour is a good thing. It allows us to kind of process and move on with our lives. So, very different type of essay, but it's still persuasive, still comes under the banner of discursive. And actually, according to the Understanding Standards website, this folio piece, this National 5 folio piece, was given full marks. So I've told you about the Understanding Standards website before. You can look at that, and maybe worth having a wee peek to see what that one did. If you look in the middle of the paragraph again, there's definitely some rule of three, repetition, rhetorical devices being used. So very, very well written. Let's have a wee look at this one. In addition to these uses, the best thing about a smartphone is that it lets you access the internet. You can research information for your subjects online or download materials from your school website. You no longer have to go to a school computer suite to do this. You can do all these things in class. Last year, a study in Manchester showed that pupils improved their test scores by 15% if they were allowed access to smartphones in class. Very compelling argument indeed. A little bit of a shorter paragraph here, but it does all the same stuff, and it even includes some facts and figures this time with the percentages that obviously have come from something the person has read and that will be listed in their sources at the end. Obviously, you can use this video and pause on any of those examples if you want to see how the different essays were written, if it helps you, give you some inspiration. But obviously, these are not your topics. These are topics that other people have done, and they're different. So, what are we looking for in these main body paragraphs? We need them to be clear and logically structured. So, paragraphed, right? I don't want to see any drafts being handed in that don't have any paragraphs. That would be a disaster. And topic sentences. Those introductory points are a good way to make sure that your essay is clear and logical and has a nice flow to it. Effective links between the sections, the arguments, the paragraphs. So use some of those linking phrases that I talked about. Effective use of vocabulary to signal shifts in arguments. So, however, furthermore, in addition to this, despite this, try and use those language examples in your essay. An appropriate tone suggested by word choice and other language features. So is the tone of your essay appropriate to the topic? So if you're writing an essay about why, just for example, Shrek 2 is the greatest sequel of all time, you can probably afford to have quite a light-hearted tone. Maybe use word choice and examples that make a bit of a joke and acknowledge the fact that it's quite a playful topic. However, if you're writing about something more serious, something related to the medical profession, for example, then you might want to have a bit more of a serious, harder-edged tone, and you might use different language. So think a great deal about your tone. Use comparisons to illustrate a point. So you can use imagery, you can use similes and metaphors. Telling a pupil to give up their smartphone would be like, well, you can complete that simile yourself. But don't overdo it. There doesn't need to be a simile or a metaphor in every paragraph, but maybe one or two in your essay would bring your writing to life. Arguments supported by evidence and arguments challenged by evidence. So, quotes. Find other people who are writing about what you're writing about and quote them. Find statistics, find percentages, find numbers. Now, statistics, percentages, numbers might not work for everybody's topic, okay? If you're doing a topic about why villains are so popular in popular culture, well, maybe there's not an obvious place to go for numbers there. Although, you could always do viewing figures or box office numbers and things like that. So I've just given myself a counter-argument to my own point. But not every topic will use statistics. However, you can definitely find some other people writing about your topic and quote them as experts. So, to finish up, my final tip. In this kind of writing, remember to make use of the techniques you've learned about in your work for reading, for understanding, analysis, and evaluation. So think about all the things that we analyse in newspaper articles. Think about all the things that we look for even in our set text when we look at the Norman McCaig poems. So word choice, sentence structure, imagery, all these kind of things. You normally look for them, but now it's your chance to use them. And the main body paragraphs is a perfect place to do that. If you've got any questions for me, you can email me, robert.duffin@south-ayrshire.gov.uk. You can also get me on Teams. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about conclusions and how to effectively sum up your essay and show you the best way to list all your sources. Thank you for watching.